Aswan, the jewel of the Nile, lies one of the largest solar parks in the world, Bin Ben. This is no coincidence. Located between latitudes 22 and 31.5 north, Egypt has among the highest solar energy potential of any country worldwide. The Bin Ben Park extends over an area of 37 square kilometers near the desert road between Aswan and Cairo. Launched in 2018 with the commissioning of the first photovoltaic plant, this mega project has been integrated into the strategy developed by the Egyptian New and Renewable Energy Authority. The aim is to contribute to increasing the share of renewable energy in its electricity mix to 42% by 2035. The park alone reduces carbon emissions by 2 million tons per year. The park includes 32 solar power plants, each with a capacity of 50 megawatts. At full capacity, it will produce 3.8 terawatt-hours of electricity annually. The project created at least 20,000 jobs during the construction period, with an additional 6,000 permanent positions by the companies operating the park. The project site was chosen based on studies and reports from NASA and other international scientific institutions, which confirm the comparative advantage of Aswan in establishing these projects in the solar energy field. Ben Solar Power Plant comes as one of the sources of energy diversification and maximization of the use of renewable energy. The project's production of electricity is equivalent to 90% of the energy produced from the high dam.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Salmawy. Sir, now, you've laid out the plans that were set and how they were implemented and executed to reach self-sufficiency in electricity, and now turning to exporting electricity. Now, we can export electricity all over the world, be it in Europe, maybe through Greece and Cyprus, maybe to the rest of the African continent, the rest of the Middle East and the Gulf countries as well. What is the general strategy in our exporting of our electricity? Do we have a certain strategy? Do we have certain priorities in certain continents or directions that we are following to export our energy?
It's actually, it's not just export, it's interconnection. Mm-hmm. Interconnection, because as the share of renewable energy increases, you need to be very strongly interconnected with neighboring countries, so both grids in neighboring countries could support each other due to the variability of renewable energy. I'll just give you an example. For the interconnection between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Actually, we have our peak demand during nighttime, while in Saudi Arabia, they have peak demand during daytime. Although we have surplus, and Saudi Arabia has a surplus, so there will be no net export along this line, but there will be an exchange, which means that we will export to them electricity during daytime, and they will export it back to us electricity during night time. This will save substantial money for both systems, because as you go for the peak system, you start to rely on the less efficient unit, so it's consume more fuel, so it's more expensive than the average. But the most important advantage from our perspective, when we export electricity to Saudi Arabia during daytime, what kind of electricity we will export? It's a solar energy. When we import it back from Saudi Arabia during night time, what Saudi Arabia served us? They act like a storage. Saudi system act as a storage for this solar energy, and we use it back during night. So it's not just exchanging, it's basically, support very strongly the renewable energy system in Egypt, so I can produce 6 gigawatt of solar energy. I use 3 in Egypt and export 3 to Saudi Arabia and get it back by night, so I have 3 during daytime and 3 during nighttime of solar energy. So this is one example of interconnection, importance of interconnection. But some countries like Sudan, where we purely export to Sudan, we produce in Egypt our electricity maybe 50% cheaper than what Sudan produces, because Sudan don't have oil or gas resources, so they rely on light diesel oil for their combined plants in close to Khartoum and in Port Sudan. They have some gas turbines in Port Sudan, and even their steam plants, which rely on heavy fuel, they also import it. So they produce close to 13 and 14 cents per kilowatt hour. We produce at less than 50% of this cost. So when we export to them, even if we make a profit margin, a little bit of it, they still save substantial money. So it's win-win for both systems. We export cheaper energy to them, and so they benefit from cheaper energy, but we're still exporting 80 gigawatt and 80 megawatt, and hope that we could reach 300 megawatt. Hopefully, things in Sudan calm quite soon, so we could resume that. In Libya and Jordan, this was an old interconnection. We have some problem like currently we have Sudan in Libya due to the turmoil in Libya, but it was just 120 megawatt. Now there is a project to increase this to 500, so to 4 times increase the capacity, because Libya is needing much energy, so we will export to Libya because they have a damaged power plant, so they are very much in need for additional energy, so we could export. Jordan has a surplus, and we have an interconnection of 500 megawatt with Jordan. But we was, before the war in Syria, we was exporting to Syria and exporting to Lebanon, so via Syria. Now, as things start to settle down in Syria, and they have seriously damaged power systems. They lost 40% of generation capacity. They lost around 60% of their transmission system. They lost 90% of their distribution system. So still a recovery. So they keep in very much in need for electricity from, so this is why we will expand this interconnection. Also Iraq. There is now project to extend connection from Jordan to Iraq. Iraq suffered a shortage of supply. Although they have money, but they have a delay in executing project. And just an example, I don't like to compare, but I mean just we resolved our problem in just 5 years. Sure, Iraq has been exposed to serious problems, but I mean they have a shortage, so having this interconnection will enable Egypt to export to now Europe. Now, as you mentioned, there is an interconnection now project for an MOU was signed to export electricity to Greece. This is ongoing. And another MOU to export electricity direct to Italy. This is very much important. In that pathway, the electricity, on all 4 pathways previously exchanged is primarily electricity, not necessarily the source from what generated. To the Europe, it should be renewable, period. Because Europe will not accept any electricity which is being generated based on gas or oil. Otherwise, they consider it like a carbon leak to Europe. And just to give you an example, there was a project for gas pipeline extending from Israel to Greece, and from Greece to Cyprus, and from Cyprus to Greece. The United States objected, Italy objected this, although they signed it, say no longer gas export, it should be renewable, period. So we have better chance. We have substantial resources of renewable, 3 gigawatt to Italy, 3 gigawatt to Greece. The 3 gigawatt to Greece, generally 1 gigawatt will be used by Greece to replace its coal power plants. 1 gigawatt will be exported from Greece to rest of Europe. 1 gigawatt will be used for producing green hydrogen, which is one.
And that takes me to the next question, green hydrogen. Now, everybody understands that green hydrogen is, by definition, environmentally friendly. but at the same time, it could prove a bit costly and it could prove a bit hard to actually store the energy that would be produced through green hydrogen. What are the prospects, or how much can we depend on the energy that could be produced from green hydrogen?
Green hydrogen is a kind, what we call a derivative for renewables, because practically green hydrogen is produced from renewable. Not all consumption needs electricity for consumption, like, for example, steel industry. They need gas for reduction of the ore of the iron to produce iron.
Yes.
So currently they use either coal or natural gas. Hydrogen could use for that. Also, we could use to produce methanol as a liquid fuel, green fuels. So now it could be like a storage for it. But we plan to export green hydrogen in a form of ammonia, which is now could be considered as a fuel, as well as we could use it internally in future.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a panorama of our view and of the progress that has been taking place in the electricity sector, and it was a great privilege to be joined by my very distinguished guest, Dr. Hafez Salmawy, Professor of Energy Engineering at Daiily University and also the former head of the Electricity Regulatory Authority. Dr. Salmawy, it has been a pleasure having you with us on the show.
Pleasure for having me.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.